EasyGospelTracks.com. EasyGospelTracks.com. EasyGospelTracks.com.
Hey, what's up, guys? Dion here. I wanted to make this quick video in order to show you guys how you can actually set up Ableton to work automatically with lyrics and all that kind of stuff and slideshows. So basically, what would happen is, along with your Ableton track, you can actually set it up so that presentation software will actually change along with the tracks. Now, most of the time, you see this done with the lyrics. When they go to the verse, the lyrics change, and it goes to the verse, and when they go to the chorus, the lyrics change automatically. Now, some people, they've been doing it manually, and they have somebody back there on the computer, and they manually change the lyrics as the song progresses. But the problem with that is sometimes people aren't paying attention, and sometimes people fall asleep, or whatever the case may be, that they end up going to the wrong slide at the wrong time, or going to the right slide too early. It's just a whole mess when you're working with people. So that's why a lot of people have ceased from doing that, and they've moved into you know um, the modern era of music and tracks and lyrics. And the modern way of doing this now is to have it done automatically. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can do that using Ableton. There are a wide variety of tools out there that you can use, but you're going to need three things in order to really follow along. But if you don't have these three things, that's okay. You can still see how it works. But the three things that you're going to need in this little mini tutorial is a DAW of some sort. In this video, we're going to be using Ableton because that's what I was learning it for, and that's what most people use it with. Um, yeah, so we're going to be using Ableton. And you're going to need Bone MIDI translator. I'm gonna show you where that is, and the download link will be below. And you're going to need some type of presentation software. Now, like I was saying, there are um, industry standard presentation software for concerts and all that kind of stuff, but really you don't even need that for this. Personally, I'm going to be using PowerPoint, or a type of presentation software like PowerPoint. Let's get started. The first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to download Bohm software, and you can find it at www.bohm.com. That's BOME.com /products Midi translator. And once you're there, you can download the trial version of this software, or you can buy the full version. The full version costs about $65. Um, but in this video, the trial version works perfectly fine, and you can use it. Actually, I'm using the trial version right now because I just downloaded this about 2 hours ago, and I've been playing with it since, just trying to figure it out to make sure it works. So before you download the full version, I would advise you to download the trial version first. Make sure you can get everything working and running the way you want to, and from there you can branch out and purchase the full software. So yeah, you just come over here to downloads in the left. All right, and you choose your system, Windows, Mac, whatever you're using, and you're gonna go to download. And this is the trial version. Now the difference between the trial version and the full version is that the trial version only runs for 20 minutes and then it shuts down. So yeah, this probably won't be best to use in the live setting, because after 20 minutes it's gonna shut down and then you got to start it back up. And I think when you start up, you have to wait like 15 to 12 seconds just for it to fully open or whatever. So yeah, so with the trial version, you choose your system, your operating system, go to download, and you go to save. I'm not gonna save it because I already have it saved, but you guys save it to your computer, and you can press pause until it finishes downloading. All right, I have it right here. All right, and it's gonna ask you how you want to install it. Now, you guys can go to standard. Usually, I like to go to custom, simply because a lot of times it's not the custom settings or the advanced settings aren't as complicated as they make it seem, but instead they kind of want to install a lot of bloatware on your computer. So I like to do the advanced install all the time, and I just kind of work my way through it. But this is everything nothing complicated. So yeah. So anyway, so you go ahead and let it install, and once it finishes installing, you're gonna want to open it up. All right, go to open. All right, and this it's just gonna open a web page showing you the new features or whatever. That's pretty much irrelevant. All right, so right here, as I was saying, the trial only runs for 20 minutes at a time. So each time you have to keep opening it up, but that's okay for learning purposes. It'll just kind of get in the way if you're trying to use it in a live setting, which is understandable for a trial. So you're gonna click OK. All right, and now we're inside the dashboard. So the first thing we're going to cover are called presets. Over here, this frame is the preset frame, so you can actually create presets. So let's say I'm going to create one for Ableton. Let's say I want to create another preset. I'll call it Studio One. Um, I'll create another preset. I'll call it um, PowerPoint. So you can have as many presets as you want, and you can assign different custom settings to each preset. I should have explained this in the beginning, but let me go ahead and explain it. The purpose of MIDI Translator Pro is it takes signals from different places, and it can send commands to other places. So for example, um, I want to connect Ableton to my PowerPoint software so I can, if I'm running a song, I can run the song lyrics right along with the song, and they'll be, directly on time every time. So, in order to do that, in order to connect Ableton with PowerPoint, I need some type of middleman, some type of middle software to connect the two. And that's what MIDI Translator Pro is. It's like a middleman. If you want to use a scenario, just kind of think of you have one person that speaks English and another person that speaks Arabic. The person that speaks English can't speak Arabic, and the person that speaks Arabic can't speak English. So those two people are standing in front of each other, but they can't communicate with one another. That's how computer programs are. But now, if those two people want to communicate, then the only way to do so is to have a person in the middle that knows both English and Arabic. So when the person who speaks English wants to tell the person that speaks Arabic something, they'll use the middleman, and vice versa. So that's pretty much what Bone MIDI Translator Pro does. So the purpose of this video is to connect Ableton to my PowerPoint software. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the system, and I'm going to tell Ableton, correction, I'm going to tell Boom how I want to connect those two programs. Now that we've covered that, let's come back to the interface. All right, so right here, this is the preset section. I can have one for Ableton, for PowerPoint, for pretty much any software that you want to connect. Um, you can have presets with certain commands. But because we're using Ableton right now, I'm just going to delete these two, and I'm just going to keep the Ableton preset. All right. So now that I'm inside the Ableton preset, you have things called translators. All right, now, and what a translator is, it's a command. And basically, back to the scenario I gave, if the person that speaks English wants to tell the person that speaks Arabic to go to the store, they have to they have to send the command through the mediator, through the translator. So that's what this section is right here. I'm going to create a list of commands. I'm going to say down. I'm going to say up. Now this command is gonna tell the program to move up or press the up button. I'm going to say down. This command is going to tell the program to move down. I can say open. I can say exit. So you have a bunch of commands that you can use, but the only command that we're going to be using in this video is down, because if you've used PowerPoint software before in the past, you know that by pressing down, you can tell the PowerPoint program to go to the next slide. So that's pretty much what we're going to do. We're just going to be moving to the next slide as Ableton triggers. So I'm gonna delete the extras. We want to keep this as simple as possible. And the only one I'm going to keep is down. So again, I have my Ableton preset. Oh, and before I forget, let me save this project before the time runs out, because if time runs out before you save your work, then you lose your work. So let me just save it. I'm going to call this Bone Test. I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call it Bone Ableton Test. And I'm going to save this inside the folder as Bone Test. Well, for consistency's sake, Ableton Test. Okay. All right. So I just saved my work. So make sure you save your work, because if you don't, you're gonna lose it. All right. So to recap, we have our Ableton preset. Remember, a preset is just a set of commands for certain scenarios. You can use it for different programs, Ableton, Live, Contact, whatever. And right here we have the commands. Remember, the mediator. The command has to tell the program what to do. I have one command called down. I have to give it the information that it needs. So if you look at the top, you'll see name. This is the name of the command. Simple. Right here, if you look right here, you'll see incoming trigger. Now this is going to be the trigger. It's going to be the incoming signal that triggers something. And what I'm going to have coming in, because it's going to be coming out of Ableton, is going to be a MIDI. It's going to be a MIDI signal. So I'm going to set the software up to look for a MIDI signal. And the outgoing action is going to tell the program what to do. So again, incoming trigger is going to be what the program should listen for, what should it watch out for. And the outgoing action is going to be what the program does when that trigger takes place. All right, so I'm gonna double click. Um, I'm gonna double click on the command. Okay, it's called down. All right, and if you look over here, this is where you're gonna tell it everything it needs to know. Right here you have translator later options. You can change the name if you want. Um, you can activate it, and so on and so forth. We're not gonna be using that. That's okay with the default settings. Now, incoming is what is going to be coming into the program to tell it what to do. Like I said, because we're using Ableton in this example, we're gonna be sending in a MIDI message, and then what's going to happen is the program is going to take that message and it's going to do something with it. So right here, if you click the drop down, you have a bunch of options. You can tell it to listen for a keystroke. to listen for a MIDI message, to listen for a preset change, a serial port, a timer, and all that good stuff. Again, we're just keeping it simple. We're going to listen for a MIDI message. All right. And the MIDI message is going to tell it something. Now, the MIDI message can tell it note on, note off, control change, all this good stuff. We're just going to use note on. All right. Now, channel is going to tell the program what channel to listen on. Now, this comes in handy for more complex situations, but because we're just doing just a basic down command, we really don't need to tamper with that. Instead, we're going to tell it any channel, any channel that comes in is going to be heard. I tell you what, before we do this, let's save our work and let's go to Ableton because it's gonna if we start on the Ableton project, it's gonna help you understand this a little bit more. So we're gonna come right back to this. So save your work, um, and you can minimize it, and then open up Ableton. All right, and we're inside Ableton. So I'm gonna delete all of these channels except for a MIDI channel, and I'm gonna delete all of the sends. Want to keep it as simple as possible. I'm gonna save this as BOM test, BOM Ableton test for consistency. All right, so I saved it as BOM test. All right, so now you can't see it, but I have a drum pad beside me. I'm gonna assign this scene to a drum pad, so that way when I press the drum pad, I can make it play. That again, that's just the extra step that I wanted to do to to save a little time. Um, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a MIDI track I just double clicked on the MIDI track on the scene in the MIDI track. So let me do that again. So I have a MIDI track right here. If you don't have one, you can just right click, go to insert MIDI track. All right, and then I'm gonna double click inside that column. So now that I've done that, I'm gonna come down here to the instrument tab, and I'm gonna find C2. All right, yeah, there is C2 right there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just place a bunch of random MIDI notes here. Just for the sake of testing. All right. All right, so I just placed 5 MIDI notes there. I'm gonna save my work. All right, so now when I hit the pad on my drum pad, it should play these MIDI notes. You're not gonna hear anything because there is no instrument attached to this channel, but you should see it. Yeah. If you look right here, you can see the channel bouncing because it's registering those MIDI notes. All right. So now what we need to do, we need to tell Ableton that we want it to connect to BOM. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to Options, Preferences, and when you look over here, you should, if you're not already in your MIDI section, you want to go to your MIDI section right here, which is right below Audio in the left hand, and click on MIDI. And if you look right here at your MIDI ports, you're gonna see all the instruments that you have connected to your DAW. Now I have my audio pad or my drum pad, my MPD 226, and you can see those ports. But you can also see BOM MIDI translator 1 for input and BOM MIDI translator 1 for output. Now we want to use BOM MIDI translator 1 output because we're going to be sending output to the MIDI translator. It's not going to be sending anything in to us, or it's not going to be sending anything to Ableton. Instead, Ableton is going to be sending something to it. So that's going to be output. We're going to be sending out a message to BOM. So you want to come down here to output, and you want to make sure track and remote is on. Now, remote is almost like a remote control. Ableton is going to be using BOM like a remote control, sending the signal to BOM and having BOM do the action that you want it to do. All right. So now that we have set up a basic MIDI track, and again I have my drum pad, so whenever I press it, If you look right here, whenever I press it, it's gonna start playing on its own. So it's playing. It's playing. All right. So you don't have to have a drum pad. You can just manually hit the play button and it'll do the same thing. So now that we've told Ableton what to do and how to do it, we're gonna come back to Boom now and we're gonna set it up. All right. So we're gonna come down here to the down translator and we're gonna come back here to the note. And we told it to listen on any channel. And for the note, okay, let's go back to live. All right, we can see that the note that we're using here is C2. Okay, C2. So we're gonna come back to Boom and we're gonna tell it C2 to listen for us for C2. All right, and that's it. That's all we need for a note. We're gonna look at velocity. I'm gonna say any velocity. And for those of you who are wondering what velocity is, um, if you've worked with a DAW or a drum pad before, you know that depending on how hard you hit something, it can change it changes the velocity. So if you hit it soft, the velocity will be really low. But if you hit it hard, the velocity will be really high. And usually if you hit a drum pad soft, the sound will be kind of soft. But if you hit it hard, it'll be more pronounced. So that's simply what velocity is. So we're gonna tell it just to listen for any velocity because the velocity isn't relevant. Again, save your work. You don't want it to cut off before you finish doing what you're doing. Um, uh-oh, see, perfect example. The trial version ends in 2 minutes. You should save your project now. All right, I'm gonna save my project. I'm just gonna go ahead and shut it down so it doesn't interrupt. I'm gonna open it up again. All right, and we're back. So we've set up channel, we've set up note, we've set up velocity. All right, and we can come in and create a description if we want. I'm just gonna say something simple. Receive signal from Ableton Live. Send to PowerPoint program. All right. So now rules. You really don't need to know about rules. The more that you play around with software, the more you're gonna learn. But this is actually it allows you to add more parameters. Now this is probably the most complicated thing, but the good thing about it, you don't have to use it just to get the basics going. Yeah, you can actually type in commands in the form of programming statements. I've never actually used it. I just learned the software like 2 hours ago. So, but I will learn it in the future. But anyway, so now that we've set up the incoming message, remember the signal that's coming into Boom. Now we have to tell it what to do. So we're gonna go to outgoing, and we're gonna say we want it to perform a keystroke. Because remember, we want it to change the PowerPoint program. So that can be done by simply pressing down. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to special key right here. And we're going to say down. All right. All right. And that should be pretty much everything we need to set up. So now what I'm going to do, remember I have my drum pad synced to Ableton. So if I press it, it should trigger this scene. I'm gonna name this bone test just so bone test scene. So when I press my drum pad, it should trigger this scene. However, when I press it, we should see the MIDI in right here. It should start lighting up. Now before I press it, let me just explain this part of the screen to you. Right here, this is called your event monitor. Right here. This The left side is input. It shows you when you have a keystroke coming in, a MIDI signal coming in, a serial coming in, a timer, so on and so forth. This right here, on the right is the output. It shows you when you have output leaving Boom. So left side shows you when something is coming in to Boom. Right side shows you when something is leaving out of Boom. And this part in the middle, this is the middleman in the scenario that I gave you. This is the translator that translates between the input and the output. Now, if something is coming in to Boom but is not reaching the translator, it's not going to make it to the output. So we have to make sure that whatever's coming in is reaching the translator, and then the translator will send it to the output. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna come back to Ableton, and I was just gonna press my drum pad, but I'm just gonna press play so you guys can see it. So let me open up the channel. All right, so I'm gonna set it up to loop a couple of times. I'm gonna come over here to the launch box. I'm gonna create a follow action, and I'm gonna say play again, and we're gonna do that for about 4 bars. Correction, just 1 bar. All right, and I'm gonna space these out a little bit. Close enough. All right, so let's try that again. It should repeat. Yeah, so it's repeating, it's looping. All right, so let's come back to Bone. All right, so when we press play, we should see some input coming in, and if not, we're gonna have to go back in and see what's going on. So we're gonna press play, and we're gonna come back to Bone and see. All right, so right now we don't see anything come in, so we have a slight problem. All right, so let's go back. Now I already know what the problem is. For some reason, Boom it Boom and Ableton, they don't always have the same note signature or whatever. So C3 Boom might see it as uh C4, something like that. Now we have this set on C2, but okay, for some reason Boom is saying it as C4. So let's go back in and let's make that C2. All right, yeah. So same problem. Boom is seeing it as something else. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna say any note. So it doesn't matter what note comes in. Just if you see anything coming in, then we want you to register it. Ah, you know what? Ah, we forgot one small step in Ableton. If we come back to Ableton, okay, if you look over here in the top right, you'll see the MIDI controls. Now, two cool things about Ableton are these two small squares right here in the top right. Now, you probably don't know what they are, but if you hover your mouse over it and you look over in the bottom left, you'll see that this one is called the MIDI track and indicator. And basically, what this does, it tells you when something is coming into Ableton. The description says this indicator flashes when live tracks receive MIDI messages that they can use. Now, the one below that is called the MIDI track out indicator. All right, this indicator flashes when live tracks send MIDI messages. So, basically, the top track flashes when MIDI is coming into Ableton, and the bottom square flashes when MIDI is going out. Now let's test it. Let's press play. All right, so right here, if we look at the track, we can see the track jumping. So we know that the MIDI that we've queued up here is actually going. But if we look over here in in the top right at the MIDI track out indicator, it's not blinking. So that means that no signal is coming out from Ableton. Now I know why. That's because when we went to the preferences, all we did was we told Ableton that Boom exists. That's all we told it. But now we need to tell it which track we want to send to Boom. So we want to send this MIDI track here. Um, and we could call it video cues, if you're using it well, lyric cue, if you're using the cue lyrics. But we have to come here and tell it where to send the MIDI. So, right at the top, we have MIDI from. Okay, the MIDI is coming from Ableton, so we're not going to bother that. But at the bottom, we have MIDI to. We have to tell Ableton to send this MIDI track to Bone. So we're going to click on the drop down at MIDI to. and we're gonna tell it to send to Bone MIDI translator 1. That's what we were missing. Okay, so we're sending it to Bone MIDI translator 1, and we're sending it on channel 1. All right, so let's recap. Not only did we have to set it up, tell Ableton that Boom exists, we then have to tell Ableton where to send the MIDI track, and we have to send it to Boom. And we did that by going to MIDI 2 and clicking the drop down and selecting Boom. So now we see that the MIDI is going to be coming from channel 1, and the note that's going to be coming from channel 1 is going to be C2. So we're going to come back to Boom. All right, and now that we're back inside Boom, we're gonna come to incoming, and for the channel, we're gonna select channel 1, which is 0. All right, and for the note, we're gonna tell it C2. I don't know why it keeps changing to C4, C2, and we're gonna save it. And now we're gonna come back and we're gonna press play again, and the light should be flashing. All right, and there it is. See, if we look right here at MIDI in, we can see that the light is flashing. So that means that Boom now sees Ableton trying to send it messages. So now we are halfway there. So now what we need to do is tell Boom what to do with the messages. All right, so again, when I press the drum pad, we can see that MIDI is coming in, but we can see that the translator in the middle is not picking it up. It's not hearing it, or it's not processing it right. And we know that it hears it when it starts blinking, similar to the MIDI in. But okay, right now something is still not working. So we have to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to stop the MIDI coming in. All right, and I already know what's going on, but I want to show you guys for future reference. Um, First thing you want to do, you want to come to translator options, and you want to make sure the active is selected. Like this determines whether the command is active or not. So this must be selected. All right. Next, what you want to do is you want to check the conditions for the incoming message. So if everything is right in the incoming section, then what's going to happen? You're going to see the little translator in the middle start blinking. But if it's not, then the translator in the middle is not going to blink. So if you see MIDI coming in, you know, okay, if you see the MIDI blinking, you know, okay, there definitely is a MIDI signal coming in. But not because the little translator isn't blinking, we know that there is a problem between the MIDI coming in and between the program recognizing it. So, like I was saying, I already know what the problem is. I was explaining it earlier. For some reason, Ableton and Boom, they don't see notes as the same. So what Ableton may call C2, Boom may call it C3. And the way that that's a problem, but the way that you get around it is you go to note, and then you just say any note. And as you can see, when I changed it to any note, it started blinking. Um, Now, it just so happened that channel 1 was correct. It was just the note that was incorrect. So yeah, right now you can see that the translator is now blinking. But if I put it back on C2, it stopped blinking. So that's what was going on here. Now, for the most part, if you really need to fine tune things, you can actually see what Bohm thinks that note is, because obviously it doesn't think it's C2, because when you press play, you see the MIDI coming in, but the translator it isn't blinking. So when you come and you set and you say any note, it starts blinking. Now the way that you can find out what Bohm thinks that note is, you can come up here to show the log window. All right, and what's going to happen is it's going to give you a little notification. This takes up a lot of resources or whatever it says. So you just click OK and you just come and it's gonna let you see it. So let me stop the MIDI coming in. Right now you can see that there's a whole bunch of MIDI coming in and a whole bunch of stuff going out. So let me just stop the MIDI coming in from Ableton. So I just pressed the button on my pad and I stopped it. All right, so now if you look, you can see right here it says in. So it's telling me information about what's coming in. It says there's a note on channel 1 with any note equals 48, and any velocity equals 100. So basically, what this tells me is that the note that Ableton is playing, Bone thinks it is note 48. So let's come over here to note. Right here, we see that C2 is 36, but Bone thinks it is 48, and here is 48, which is C3. So when Ableton plays C2, Bone thinks it's C3. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it is. So now when I change the note to C3, and then I start the signal coming in again from Ableton, you should see this translator light up now. So I'm gonna try it, and there it is. So that's just something that you have to troubleshoot. But I'm just gonna change this to a random note. So I'm changing it back to C2, and you see that the note isn't coming in. So the first step that you want to get is you want to get MIDI coming in. And remember that this side right here tells you incoming. So it tells you when MIDI is coming in. So when I press the pad, my drum pad, and start the MIDI track from Ableton, we can see that Bohm sees the MIDI coming in from Ableton. However, the translator doesn't see it. That means there's a problem between the translator and the MIDI coming in. So we go to the incoming section, and we changed it to any note, and then it started blinking. And then we went to the log file, and we stopped the signal coming in, and we saw that the note was coming in on channel 1 according to Bohm, and the note that was playing was note 48. So we come over here to note 48, and we see that that's C3. So Bohm thinks it's C3 for whatever reason. Um, all right, and when we press the pad again, or when we start the track in Ableton, you can come Ableton, press play. Uh-oh. Okay, I see what happened. Um, yeah, when you come up to Ableton, press play, you're gonna see the track actually starts moving down. That's because the command that we set it for was down. But if you look over here in the bottom right, you can now see that this MIDI out indicator is blinking. Uh, yeah. So now that we've connected Ableton to Bohm, and we've told it to press down, now we can actually open our PowerPoint and test it out. So I'm gonna open a test PowerPoint that I created. All right, and I'm gonna start the slide. Start the show from the first slide. So now when I press my drum pad, this slide should automatically begin to work on its own. So I'm gonna press it one time. I'm gonna take my hands off of it. All right, press. Okay, it's doing that. It's doing that on its own. So yeah, um, that's pretty much how you do it. Oh, I forgot. I have the Ableton clip looped. So let me take that loop off. It's gonna loop forever. All right. So when I press it again, it should just do it one time and stop. I keep forgetting that I have the down button selected. So when I press it one time, it's gonna jump through all of the slides. That's pretty much how you do it. I'm sorry that this tutorial is a little rough around the edges. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. I just kind of learned all this stuff, a couple of hours ago. But I wanted to make it easy on a lot of you guys because I know how hard it can be to try to learn, how to integrate all this software and all that good stuff. Okay, so in conclusion, what was the point of this? The point of doing this is being able to sync a program with Ableton. And by doing so, you can actually take your tracks and create song slides with the lyrics with almost any program. And you can tell it when to change. So no more do you have to worry about, the lyrics not changing with your track because the lyrics will always change with the track because the same thing that's controlling the track is controlling the lyrics. Oh, and also, guys, I'm gonna include all of these files in a small little zip file that you can download and use to test. So it's gonna include the Ableton file. It's gonna include the PowerPoint that I use. I'm gonna put it in Microsoft Word format, and it's gonna include the Bone preset that I use. So you're going to be able to download this file and just open up and pretty much see everything I did. So you'll pretty much be good to go from the get-go. So I hope that helps. Yeah, I hope you found this video helpful. And if I forgot anything or if you have any questions, just let me know and I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. So yeah, thanks for watching.